My husband cheated with my sister. So I took everything he loved. I smiled as my husband slipped a diamond ring onto my younger sister's finger. The guests applauded. Champagne glasses clinked. My mother wiped away tears of happiness. Someone behind me whispered, "They look perfect together." I smiled even wider. Not because I had forgiven them. Not because I had moved on. I smiled because none of them knew that, in less than an hour, the wedding would become the beginning of their downfall. The police were already on their way. The Financial Crimes Investigation Unit had received my evidence 20 minutes earlier. 3 different banks were freezing Ethan Carter's accounts. My lawyer was sitting quietly in the last row. And hidden inside my handbag was the final letter my grandfather had written before he died. A letter that would change everything. My name is Olivia Bennett. 3 months earlier, I was nothing more than a woman desperately trying to save her marriage. I had no idea that the 2 people I loved the most had already destroyed it. People often ask whether I ignored the warning signs. The truth? Love makes intelligent people believe impossible things. I met Ethan Carter when I was 24. I had just joined one of the largest architectural firms in New York as a junior architect. He was already making headlines. Young, confident, CEO of Carter Developments. Every magazine called him the future king of real estate. He walked into our office to discuss a luxury hotel project. Every woman noticed him. He noticed me. Not because I was the prettiest. Not because I spoke the loudest. Because, while everyone else admired him, I challenged his design. "The glass facade is beautiful," I told him during the meeting. "But it'll turn every guest room into an oven during summer." The room went silent. Nobody interrupted Ethan Carter. Instead of getting angry, he smiled. "What would you do differently?" I picked up his drawing. Spent 5 minutes sketching over it. When I finished, he looked at me for a long time. Then he said something I never forgot. "I've met hundreds of architects. You're the first one who wasn't afraid to tell me I was wrong." That afternoon turned into coffee. Coffee became dinners. Dinners became love. Or, at least what I believed was love. 2 years later we got married. For a while, life felt perfect. We bought a beautiful home overlooking the Hudson River. I continued working as an architect. Ethan's company grew larger every year. Whenever reporters asked about the secret behind his success, he always smiled and pointed at me. "My wife keeps my feet on the ground." Every time he said that, I believed him. Then, grandfather started asking strange questions. William Bennett had raised me since I was 8. After my parents died in a car accident, he became my entire world. He wasn't wealthy. Or at least, that's what I believed. He lived in the same small countryside house for 40 years. Drove an old pickup truck. Wore the same brown sweater every winter. He always said, "A person's character is measured by how they treat people when nobody is watching." One Sunday afternoon he invited Ethan and me for lunch. Everything felt normal until dessert. Grandfather quietly looked at Ethan. "If one day Olivia lost everything, would you still stay?" Ethan laughed. "What kind of question is that?" "A simple one." Ethan reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "I married Olivia. Not money." Grandfather smiled. But it wasn't a happy smile. It was the smile of a man who had just confirmed something he already suspected. As we drove home, I asked him about it. "He worries too much," Ethan replied. I agreed. Looking back, I wish I hadn't. Emma Bennett had always been different from me. She was 3 years younger. Beautiful. Confident. The kind of woman who could walk into any room and immediately become the center of attention. Growing up, people constantly compared us. Olivia is responsible. Emma is exciting. I hated those comparisons. Emma pretended she hated them too. But somewhere along the way, she started believing that life owed her everything I had. When she became a lifestyle influencer, her social media exploded. Designer clothes, luxury vacations, perfect photos, millions of followers. From the outside, she looked successful. But every conversation eventually came back to one thing. You have such a perfect husband. You two have such a perfect life. I always laughed. We're just ordinary people. She'd smile. But her eyes never agreed. The first crack appeared on our 5th wedding anniversary. Ethan forgot. Completely. When I called him, he said he had an emergency board meeting. I believed him. So I drove to his office with dinner to surprise him. His assistant looked confused. Mr. Carter left 2 hours ago. He said he was meeting his wife. My stomach tightened. I'm his wife. The assistant's face turned pale. I'm sorry. I smiled politely. It's probably a misunderstanding. I walked back to my car, sat behind the steering wheel, and waited. 43 minutes later, I watched Ethan's black Mercedes pull into the underground parking garage across the street. Another car followed. White. Convertible. Emma stepped out. She laughed as Ethan wrapped his arm around her waist. Then, he kissed her. Not a friendly kiss. Not an accidental kiss. The kind of kiss that only happens after months of practice. Something inside me broke. But I didn't cry. Not there. I quietly started my car and drove home. That night, I couldn't sleep. At 3 a.m, I heard Ethan unlock the front door. He walked upstairs as quietly as possible, slipped into bed beside me, wrapped his arm around my waist, and whispered, "I'm sorry I'm late." For the first time in 6 years, his touch felt unfamiliar. I realized something terrifying. The man lying beside me had just kissed my sister, and now he was pretending nothing had happened. I stared into the darkness until sunrise. One question echoed through my mind. How long had they been lying to me? The next morning, I called exactly one person. Daniel Brooks, my childhood best friend, and the only lawyer my grandfather had ever trusted. He answered on the first ring. "Olivia, I need your help." His voice immediately changed. What happened? I looked through my bedroom window. Ethan was laughing on a business call beside the swimming pool, completely unaware that my world had collapsed overnight. I took a slow breath, then quietly said the sentence that would begin everything that followed. "Daniel, I think my husband is having an affair with my sister." Silence. Then, Daniel asked a question I wasn't expecting. "Olivia, before we do anything, has your grandfather spoken to you recently about the Bennett Trust?" I frowned. "What Bennett Trust?" Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he quietly said 6 words that made my heart stop. "Your grandfather has been waiting for this." I couldn't breathe. Daniel's words echoed inside my head. "Your grandfather has been waiting for this. What are you talking about?" I whispered. Daniel sighed. "Not over the phone. I need answers now." "I know." His voice sounded unusually serious. "But if I'm right, everything you believe about your family is about to change." An hour later, I was sitting inside Daniel Brooks' law office. Rain tapped softly against the floor-to-ceiling windows. Daniel had been my best friend since elementary school. He knew every chapter of my life, every dream, every heartbreak. But today, he looked at me differently, almost with sympathy. He placed a cup of coffee in front of me. "You look exhausted." I watched my husband kiss my sister. "I don't think coffee can fix that." He nodded. "No, it can't." For a few moments neither of us spoke. Finally he slid a thick brown envelope across the desk. "This was left with me 2 years ago." I frowned. "By who?" "Your grandfather." My heart skipped. "What is it?" "He instructed me never to give it to you. Unless Ethan betrayed you." I stared at the envelope. My hands suddenly felt cold. Grandpa knew. Daniel nodded slowly. He didn't know it would happen. But he believed it eventually would. I carefully opened the envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter. The handwriting was unmistakable. William Bennett. My grandfather. Tears filled my eyes before I even read the first sentence. My dearest Olivia, if you're reading this, then the man you trusted has proven me right. My vision blurred. I continued reading. You once asked me why I never trusted Ethan. The answer is simple. He never looked at you the way a husband looks at his wife. He looked at you the way a businessman looks at an investment. A tear rolled down my cheek. Grandfather had seen it years before I had. The letter continued. Love doesn't count what someone owns. Greed does. Ethan asked me more questions about my finances than about my health. That told me everything I needed to know. I lowered the letter. I never noticed. Daniel looked at me kindly. You were in love. I kept reading. I never wanted to interfere in your marriage. I hoped I was wrong. But if I wasn't, then you deserve to know the truth. I turned the page. What I read next changed everything. I am not a retired florist. I blinked. What? Daniel quietly stood and walked toward a bookshelf. He removed another folder. I think you should see this. Inside were newspaper articles, business magazines, corporate reports. Every headline featured one company, Bennett Global Holdings. One article caught my attention. Founder William Bennett steps down after 40 years. My heart nearly stopped. Founder? I looked at the photograph. It was Grandpa, 20 years younger, standing beside presidents, prime ministers, business leaders. I couldn't believe my eyes. No. Daniel nodded. Yes. Your grandfather founded one of the largest infrastructure companies in North America. I laughed nervously. That's impossible. You grew up in a small farmhouse. He wanted it that way. Daniel opened another file. This is why. Inside were dozens of photographs. Some were old, some recent. Each one showed photographers hiding in bushes, men following our car, people watching Grandpa's house. He knew people were watching him? Daniel nodded. Every day. Why? Because when you're worth billions, you never know who wants your money. I felt dizzy. So everything was fake. No. The flower shop was real. The farmhouse was real. The simple life was real. He simply chose not to live like a billionaire. Daniel leaned forward. Olivia, I need to ask you something. What? Did Ethan ever ask you about Grandpa's assets? I thought back. Conversations I'd forgotten. Small comments. Questions that seemed harmless. What happens to the farmhouse someday? Does your grandfather own any land? Has he written his will? At the time, I thought Ethan was simply making conversation. Now, every question sounded different. He asked. A lot. Daniel quietly nodded. He asked us too. My stomach tightened. What? 6 months ago. He tried contacting Grandpa's lawyers. For what? To confirm how much he'd inherit after your grandfather died. I stared at him. But Grandpa wasn't even sick. No. He was perfectly healthy. A cold shiver ran through my body. Daniel reached into another folder. I debated showing you this. What is it? A private investigator's report. I slowly opened it. Photographs. Hotel receipts. Restaurant bills. Flight bookings. Dozens of pictures. Emma. Ethan. Together. Holding hands. Vacationing. Laughing. My chest tightened. The earliest photograph was dated almost 2 years earlier. 2 years. While I believed I had a happy marriage, my husband had been secretly building another relationship with my own sister. I finally broke. Tears rolled down my face. Daniel didn't interrupt. He simply placed a box of tissues beside me. After several minutes, I wiped my eyes. I'm done crying. Daniel looked surprised. You are? I nodded. Today. I cried enough. What now? I folded the investigator's report. I want the truth. All of it. Daniel smiled slightly. I hoped you'd say that. He walked toward the office safe, entered a code, removed one final folder. This one was marked in red. Ethan Carter. What's inside? Everything. What do you mean? Company finances. Hidden bank accounts. Property ownership. Tax records. My eyes widened. How do you have all this? Daniel looked at me. Because your grandfather hired investigators 3 years ago. What? He never trusted Ethan. So he started watching him. I slowly opened the file. Page after page. Financial statements. Secret companies. Offshore accounts. Luxury apartments registered under fake businesses. Millions of dollars. Hidden from shareholders. Hidden from banks. Hidden. Even from me. Daniel quietly said, Olivia, I don't think Ethan is only cheating. I looked up. What are you saying? He slid one final document across the desk. A confidential audit report. At the bottom, one sentence was highlighted. Evidence suggests Carter Developments is insolvent and surviving through fraudulent accounting practices. I looked at Daniel in disbelief. You mean he isn't rich? Daniel nodded. He appears rich. But his company is collapsing. He needs one thing to survive. What? Daniel looked directly into my eyes. Your grandfather's inheritance. At that exact moment, my phone vibrated. A new Instagram notification appeared. Emma had uploaded a photograph. She was smiling, standing beside Ethan. The caption read, Some love stories are worth waiting for. I stared at the screen. Then, very slowly, I smiled. Not because it didn't hurt. Because, for the first time, I understood exactly what they were planning. And I finally knew how I was going to stop them. I didn't confront Ethan. I didn't call Emma. And I definitely didn't post an emotional message online like they probably expected. Instead, I went home. When I walked through the front door, Ethan was already there. He was sitting on the couch wearing sweatpants, casually watching television as if nothing had happened. He looked at me and smiled. Hey, babe. Babe. The same lips that had kissed my sister less than 24 hours earlier were now smiling at me. I forced myself to smile back. Long day. He sighed dramatically. You have no idea. I've been in meetings all day. Meetings. I almost laughed. I made your favorite pasta. His face lit up. You always know how to make me feel better. No. I knew exactly how to make him comfortable. Because comfortable people make mistakes. That night, I watched him carefully. Every lie. Every fake smile. Every affectionate gesture. For years, I had mistaken manipulation for love. Now, I could see every performance. 3 days passed. I became the perfect wife again. I packed his lunch, made his coffee, asked about his day, kissed him goodbye every morning. He relaxed. His guard slowly disappeared. Exactly as Daniel predicted. Meanwhile, Daniel quietly began gathering evidence. Every evening, he called me with another discovery. Ethan transferred $12 million to an offshore account. The next day, we found another shell company. The day after, he forged signatures on 2 land acquisitions. Each phone call revealed another layer of deception. The husband I loved didn't really exist. Then one evening, grandfather called. Come visit me tomorrow. His voice sounded weaker than usual. I smiled. I'll bring your favorite apple pie. I'd like that. There was a pause. Then he quietly added, "I also have something important to tell you." Something about his tone made my chest tighten. The next morning, I drove to the farmhouse. Grandfather was already sitting on the porch. The same wooden rocking chair, the same brown sweater, the same warm smile. But somehow, he looked older, much older. When he saw me, he stood up and hugged me. Longer than usual. "I've missed you. I was here last week." "I know. But sometimes." He smiled sadly. "A week feels like a lifetime." Something wasn't right. We spent the afternoon exactly as we always had. He watered the garden. I helped arrange flowers. We ate homemade pie. For a few hours, life felt normal again. Then, he handed me an old brass key. It was small, heavy, and beautifully engraved. "What is this?" "A promise." I frowned. "I don't understand." "You will. When? When you need it." I laughed. "You always answer questions with riddles." He chuckled. "I've had 78 years of practice." Then, his smile slowly disappeared. "Olivia." "Yes. If one day everyone turns against you, don't let anger make your decisions." I looked at him. "Why are you saying this?" "Because revenge feels satisfying for a moment. But justice," he gently closed my fingers around the key, "lasts forever." As I drove home, his words stayed with me. I didn't know. They would be the last advice he would ever give me. At 2 o'clock the next morning, my phone rang. "Daniel." I answered immediately. "Daniel?" His voice was quiet. "Olivia, I'm coming to pick you up." My heart stopped. What happened? There was silence. Then, "I'm sorry." "No. No. Please don't say it." I already knew. Somehow, I already knew. Grandfather had passed away peacefully in his sleep. The funeral was held 4 days later. Hundreds of people attended. I didn't recognize most of them. Business executives, government officials, military officers, foreign diplomats. Why would people like that attend a florist's funeral? None of it made sense. Then I noticed something even stranger. Every important guest greeted Daniel. Before they greeted me, almost as if he already knew something I didn't. Emma arrived wearing expensive black designer clothes. She hugged me dramatically. "I'm so sorry." The smell of Ethan's cologne still lingered on her coat. I stepped back. She didn't notice. Or perhaps, she didn't care. Ethan arrived a few minutes later. Perfect black suit. Expensive sunglasses. The grieving husband. Everyone praised him. "You're taking such good care of Olivia." He nodded humbly. "It's what family does." Family. The word made me sick. After the funeral, Daniel approached me. "The will reading is tomorrow." I nodded. Ethan overheard. "I'll come with Olivia." Daniel smiled politely. "I'm afraid you can't." Ethan frowned. "Why not?" Those were Mr. Bennett's instructions. For the first time, I saw genuine panic flash across Ethan's face. Just for a second. Then it disappeared. The next morning, we entered Bennett Global Holdings. I froze. The building was enormous. 50 floors of glass and steel. The company logo stretched across the entrance. Employees filled the lobby. Everyone seemed busy. Successful. Professional. I turned to Daniel. "What are we doing here?" He smiled. "This belongs to your grandfather." I stared at him. "No. It can't." "It does." Before I could ask another question, every employee in the lobby stood up. Hundreds of people. All at once. They looked at me. Then bowed their heads. "Good morning, Miss Bennett." I couldn't move. "What is happening?" Daniel quietly said. "Welcome to the company your grandfather spent 40 years building." The elevator doors opened. We stepped inside. Floor 50. The boardroom overlooked the entire city. 12 directors were already waiting. Each of them stood as I entered. At the head of the table sat an elderly woman with silver hair. She smiled warmly. "Miss Bennett. My name is Margaret Lawson. I've been your grandfather's executive chairwoman for 22 years. I blinked. 22 years? She nodded. He often talked about you. I looked around the room. Everyone was watching me. Waiting. Margaret opened a leather folder. It's time to read William Bennett's final will. I took a deep breath. I had expected a farmhouse. Maybe a little money. Instead, I was about to discover why my grandfather had spent his entire life pretending to be an ordinary florist, and why Ethan Carter had been so desperate to stay married to me. I couldn't stop staring at the name engraved across the boardroom wall. Bennett Global Holdings. This wasn't a small company. It wasn't even a national company. It was an international empire. Construction, luxury hotels, renewable energy, commercial real estate, infrastructure, everything my grandfather had built while living in a tiny farmhouse and growing roses. I looked at Daniel. Why? Why hide all of this from me? He didn't answer. Instead, he nodded toward Margaret Lawson. She gently unfolded my grandfather's handwritten will. The room became completely silent. Then she began reading. To everyone gathered here today. If you are hearing these words, it means I have lived a long and grateful life. The greatest achievement of my life was never Bennett Global Holdings. It was raising my granddaughter, Olivia. My eyes filled with tears. Grandfather had never been good at expressing emotions face to face. Instead, he wrote them down. Margaret continued. Olivia, if life has brought you to this room, then Ethan Carter has already shown you who he truly is. A murmur spread across the directors. Daniel quietly lowered his head. Grandfather knew. Years ago, he knew. I watched Ethan carefully. He admired money more than character. He spoke about inheritance more than family. He measured people by what they owned. That is why I refused to introduce him to this company. I remembered every family dinner, every question Ethan had asked, every conversation about Grandpa's finances. He had never been curious about the man, only the money. Margaret turned another page. Olivia, you once asked me why I continued arranging flowers when I could have lived anywhere in the world. The answer is simple. Money changes people. Simple living reveals them. I smiled through my tears. That sounded exactly like him. Then, Margaret looked directly at me. This next section concerns only you. She handed me another envelope. My hands trembled as I opened it. Inside was another handwritten letter. My sweet Olivia. I always hoped I was wrong about Ethan. If you're reading this, then I wasn't. Please don't let hatred consume your heart. Justice is stronger than revenge because justice allows you to sleep peacefully afterward. I wiped away another tear. The next paragraph made me stop breathing. As of today, you become the sole owner of 81% of Bennett Global Holdings. The room was silent. Even I couldn't speak. 81%? Daniel slowly slid a financial report toward me. Company valuation. $2.4 billion. I stared at the number. Again. My grandfather had left me nearly $2 billion. I couldn't process it. Margaret smiled warmly. Congratulations, Miss Bennett. You are now chairwoman of Bennett Global Holdings. Every board member stood. One by one. They applauded. Not loudly. Respectfully. I looked around the room. I'm not qualified. Margaret smiled. Your grandfather disagreed. Daniel quietly added. He spent years preparing you. I've never even worked here. You've been studying architecture for 10 years. You've managed billion-dollar construction projects. You negotiate contracts every week. You simply didn't know. You were preparing for this job. Suddenly, the boardroom doors burst open. Ethan. He looked furious. What is going on? Security moved toward him. I have every right to be here. He walked directly toward me. Olivia. You left without telling me. I looked at him calmly. This is a private meeting. I'm your husband. Before I could answer, Margaret spoke. No. Everyone turned toward her. She calmly adjusted her glasses. Mr. Carter. You are not a shareholder. You are not an executive. And according to William Bennett's legal instructions, you were never to enter this boardroom. Ethan looked stunned. What? He turned toward me. Olivia. What are they talking about? I slowly stood. 4 years. I had looked up to this man. Today, for the first time, I looked him directly in the eyes. My grandfather owned this company. His face changed. What? He left it to me. Silence. His expression slowly transformed. Shock. Disbelief. Then excitement. His smile returned. He walked closer. Olivia. Why didn't you tell me? Tell him? I almost laughed. You've only just found out. He immediately wrapped his arms around me. I'm so proud of you. His voice sounded emotional. But I knew better now. He wasn't hugging me. He was hugging $2 billion. That evening, he took me to dinner. Ordered the most expensive wine. Talked about our future. Our future. He repeated those words at least 20 times. We should merge Bennett Global with Carter Developments. We could build the biggest company in the country. We're unstoppable together. I simply smiled. And listened. For the first time, he was revealing exactly what he wanted. Not me. My inheritance. The next morning, Daniel entered my new office carrying another file. You were right. I looked up. About what? Ethan. He placed several documents on my desk. We've finished tracing his finances. I opened the report. What I read shocked even me. Carter Developments wasn't worth billions. It wasn't even profitable. The company was over $380 million in debt. Banks were preparing legal action. Investors were demanding answers. Construction projects had stopped. Ethan wasn't searching for love. He was searching for a bailout. And my inheritance was his only escape. I slowly closed the file. When does he find out? Daniel smiled. He already thinks he has. I looked confused. What do you mean? Daniel handed me a wedding magazine. The cover featured Emma. Headlined, Influencer Emma Bennett rumored to be dating billionaire CEO Ethan Carter. Below it, a smaller article. Marriage expected soon after Carter divorce finalized. I frowned. They're moving fast. Daniel nodded. Because Ethan believes he'll receive half your fortune in the divorce. I slowly leaned back in my chair. Then, for the first time since discovering the affair, I genuinely smiled. Not out of pain. Not out of anger. Out of certainty. Because Ethan had just made the biggest mistake of his life. He believed my grandfather had made me rich. He had no idea. Grandfather had also spent years making sure Ethan would never receive a single dollar. I looked at Daniel. Let's begin. He smiled. With the divorce? I slowly shook my head. No. With the investigation. Daniel's eyes narrowed. You want to expose everything? I nodded once. Not just the affair. I want the truth. The hidden companies. The fraud. The fake accounts. The stolen money. The lies. I want all of it. Daniel smiled. I was hoping you'd say that. He opened one final folder. Across the top were 4 words. Confidential Federal Investigation. I looked at him. What is this? Daniel's smile disappeared. It's the evidence. That could send Ethan Carter to prison. The next 6 weeks were the hardest of my life. Every morning Ethan kissed my forehead before leaving for work. Every evening he pretended to be the perfect husband. And every night, he secretly met my sister. The strange part wasn't his betrayal anymore. It was how easy lying had become for him. If I hadn't seen them together with my own eyes, I might have believed every word. Daniel and I met almost every evening. Not to plan revenge. To prepare the truth. Forensic accountants examined Carter developments. Private investigators interviewed former employees. Cybersecurity experts recovered deleted emails. Financial investigators tracked hidden bank transfers. The deeper we looked, the uglier the picture became. Ethan hadn't only betrayed me. He had betrayed his investors, his employees, his business partners, even the banks financing his projects. Every lie pointed toward one conclusion. His company wasn't struggling. It was collapsing. And he was desperately trying to delay the inevitable. One Friday afternoon, Ethan surprised me. He walked into our home carrying flowers. The same white lilies he had bought for me when we first started dating. For just a moment, I remembered the man I thought I had married. "I've been thinking," he said. "We've grown apart." I nodded quietly. "I agree. I think we should separate." There it was. The performance. He waited for me to cry, to beg, to ask why. Instead, I smiled. "If that's what you want, I won't stop you." For the first time, he looked disappointed, almost confused. "You aren't going to fight for us?" I looked at him calmly. "You already stopped fighting months ago." He lowered his eyes. "I've already spoken to a lawyer." "So have I." He handed me divorce papers. I didn't even read them. "I'll have Daniel review everything." The smile disappeared from Ethan's face. "Daniel?" "Yes. My lawyer." For just a second, I saw panic. He knew Daniel Brooks had a reputation for uncovering financial fraud. That tiny moment told me everything. 2 months later, the divorce became official. Or so Ethan believed. Because Daniel had discovered something remarkable. Ethan had intentionally failed to disclose dozens of hidden companies during the financial disclosures. That meant the settlement could still be challenged in court. Legally, he had committed fraud. We didn't tell him. Instead, we waited. Exactly as Grandpa had taught me. Truth is most powerful when people believe they're safe. 3 months later, the invitations arrived. "Emma Bennett and Ethan Carter request the pleasure of your company." At their wedding, I almost laughed. My own sister had invited me to watch her marry my ex-husband. Daniel looked at the invitation. "So, are we going?" I folded it carefully. "Oh, we're definitely going." The wedding took place at one of the city's most luxurious hotels. Crystal chandeliers, fresh orchids, a string orchestra, hundreds of guests, influencers, business leaders, television reporters. Everyone wanted photographs of the glamorous couple. No one expected me to arrive. The room became silent. Emma looked stunned. Then, she smiled confidently. She thought I'd come to accept defeat. She couldn't have been more wrong. The ceremony began. Ethan looked happier than I'd ever seen him. He believed everything had worked perfectly. He had left his wife, won the younger sister, and soon, he believed, he would gain access to Bennett Global's fortune through Emma. He had absolutely no idea. He had never been part of my grandfather's plan. The officiant smiled. "If anyone objects." I remained seated. Daniel looked at me. I quietly whispered, "Not yet." The ceremony continued. They exchanged vows, wedding rings. The guests applauded. Emma cried. Our mother cried even harder. She truly believed this was a beautiful love story. Then, the ballroom doors opened. 6 people walked inside. 2 federal investigators. 3 financial crime officers. 1 court official. The music stopped. Conversations disappeared. The lead investigator spoke clearly. "Ethan Carter?" Ethan turned around. "Yes. You are being served with a federal asset preservation order." Confusion spread across the room. "What?" Another investigator stepped forward. "Your personal accounts. Your corporate accounts. And all assets connected to Carter Developments have been frozen pending investigation." Guests began whispering. Telephones appeared. People started recording. Emma looked at Ethan. "What are they talking about?" He couldn't answer. Because he didn't know. The officers continued. "We also have evidence of tax fraud, financial misrepresentation, corporate fraud, and concealment of assets during divorce proceedings." The room exploded into chaos. Emma grabbed Ethan's arm. "Tell them they're wrong." He looked completely lost. I can explain." The investigator interrupted. "You can explain at the interview." He handed Ethan a thick folder. Inside were hundreds of pages. Every hidden company. Every offshore account. Every forged signature. Everything Daniel had uncovered. Then, the court official turned toward me. "Mrs. Bennett." I stood. He smiled politely. "The family court has accepted your petition to reopen the divorce settlement based on fraudulent financial disclosure." Ethan slowly looked at me. "You." I met his eyes. "Yes." His face turned pale. "You knew." "For months." Daniel quietly stepped beside me. "We tried to settle this privately. You chose deception." Emma looked completely terrified. "What happens now?" Daniel answered calmly. "Carter Developments will likely enter administration. The pending fraud investigation may result in criminal charges. And because the marriage took place after the financial orders." He looked toward Ethan. "Your new wife won't inherit debts that don't legally belong to her." Emma frowned. "What does that mean?" Daniel answered softly. "It means there isn't a fortune. There never was. The company is bankrupt." Emma slowly released Ethan's hand. "No. You told me." Ethan couldn't even look at her. Our mother burst into tears. She looked at me. "Olivia." I didn't know. I believed her. She had been manipulated too. I gently hugged her. "I know." Emma tried to speak. "I'm sorry." I looked at my little sister. The girl who used to steal my clothes. The girl who used to hold my hand crossing the street. The girl who had become so jealous. She destroyed our family. "I hope one day," I quietly said, "you learn the difference between love and envy." Then I walked away. 6 months later, Carter Developments officially collapsed. Ethan accepted responsibility for financial misconduct and was barred from serving as a company director. Several civil cases from investors followed, and he spent years trying to rebuild his reputation. Emma disappeared from social media. Not because people hated her, because she finally understood that chasing someone else's life had cost her her own. Our mother slowly repaired her relationship with me. It wasn't immediate. Trust rarely returns overnight. But we tried. And that mattered. As for me, I accepted my role as chairwoman of Bennett Global Holdings. I expanded the scholarship program Grandpa had quietly funded for decades. I invested in affordable housing projects. I reopened the small flower shop in his hometown. Not because it made money. Because it reminded me where I came from. One evening, Daniel and I stood outside the shop watching the sunset. He smiled. "Your grandfather would be proud." I smiled back. "No. He planned all of this." Daniel laughed. "Even us standing here?" I looked at the roses growing beside the entrance. "No. but he taught me the most important lesson of my life. Daniel waited. I looked toward the old wooden sign that still read, Bennett Flowers. Then I quietly said, the greatest victory isn't making the people who hurt you suffer. It's making sure they can never take your peace again. And for the first time in a very long time, I wasn't smiling because I had won. I was smiling because I was finally free. If you enjoyed this story, subscribe for more Reddit drama stories. What would you have done in Olivia's situation? Let me know in the comments. Until then, sending you lots of love. Don't forget to subscribe the channel. Bye loves.